Bella wasn't barking like a dog barks when it sees a squirrel. She was screaming, and anyone who knew border collies knew that wasn't normal. It was mid-afternoon on a typical Tuesday on the rural road that cut through the farms around Ashburton, New Zealand. The sun was strong, the wind carried the scent of dry earth and cut grass, and the few cars that passed by usually drove straight past, because nobody stopped on that road unless they knew someone. But Bella wasn't letting anyone get away with it. She would run to the middle of the road, barking with a spine-chilling urgency, and when the driver swerved, she would chase after the car, panting as if begging, and then run back toward the entrance to the McAllister farm. 3 cars had already passed. 3 people thought she was just a lost dog. But when the 4th car pulled up, an old pickup truck driven by a neighbor named Greg, who lived 5 kilometers away and rarely spoke to anyone, Bella did something different. She stopped barking. She looked him straight in the eyes, and he ran. Greg hesitated. He was in a hurry. He had to get feed in town before the end of the afternoon, but something in that look made him turn off the engine and get out of the truck. He followed Bella down the dirt road that led to the farm. The gate was open. Strange. John McAllister never left the gate open. Bella ran ahead, looking back every 5 steps as if checking to see if Greg was still there. His heart began to beat faster. When they arrived at the barn, Bella stopped at the entrance and barked once, just once, as a warning. Greg went inside, and he found John lying on the cement floor, amidst scattered tools and a puddle of old oil. His face was pale, his eyes were closed, his breathing was almost imperceptible. Greg shouted his name. Nothing. He pulled out his cell phone. He called emergency services. His voice trembled as he gave the address. Bella was sitting next to John, her snout pressed against his chest, as if trying to keep him awake until help arrived. 15 minutes later, the ambulance entered the farm. 20 minutes later, John was on his way to Ashburton Hospital. And half an hour later, the news had already spread throughout the entire community. John McAllister, the man no one had seen for months, who barely responded when greeted, who had lived locked away on that farm since his wife died 5 years ago, nearly died alone in his own barn. If it weren't for Bella. But what no one knew yet, not Greg, not the paramedics, not the neighbors who started calling each other that afternoon, was that John wasn't just isolated. He was saying goodbye. 3 days before he fainted, he had signed the papers to sell the farm. The move to the city was scheduled for the end of the month. He could no longer bear waking up every day in that heavy silence, in that house full of ghosts, in that place that was once home, but now only caused pain. Bella was the only thing that still kept him there. And perhaps that's why, when he fell, she knew she couldn't let him go like that. Before I tell you what happened when John woke up in the hospital and discovered who had organized an entire effort to save him, subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because what's coming next is the kind of thing you only believe when you see it with your own eyes. When John opened his eyes 2 days later in the recovery ward, the first thing he saw was not a nurse. There was a line of people in the hallway outside his room. John blinked slowly, trying to understand if it was real or if he was still dreaming because of the medication. But the line was still there. He recognized some faces. Greg, the neighbor who had followed Bella. Mrs. Patterson, the owner of the local grocery store. Young Matt, who worked at the gas station. And others. People he barely greeted when he passed them on the street. People he thought had forgotten he existed. A nurse entered the room and smiled at him with that warm smile that only people from New Zealand have. "Welcome back, Mr. McAllister. You gave us quite a scare." His voice came out hoarse. "What? What happened?" "You fainted in the barn. Severe dehydration, exhaustion, low blood pressure. If you had stayed there alone for another half hour, the story would be different." John swallowed hard. "And Bella?" The nurse smiled even wider. "Your dog? She's the hero of the whole city now. She stopped 4 cars on the road before someone followed her. She saved your life, Mr. McAllister." He closed his eyes and felt a tightening in his chest. It wasn't physical pain. It was something else, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Blame. Because he had planned to leave Bella behind. Not literally. He was going to take her to the city, of course. But he knew she wouldn't be happy in a small apartment. She was a border collie. She was born to run in open fields, to herd sheep, to live where the horizon has no end. And even so, he was going to drag her away from there, because he couldn't stay any longer. The nurse gently touched his shoulder. There are people who want to see you, but only if you're feeling well, okay? John looked down the hallway again. Who are these people? Your neighbors. They've been here since yesterday. Some brought flowers, others brought homemade food. And there are some people who, well, you'd better hear it from them yourself. She left, and Greg went in. He was holding the cap in his hands, somewhat awkwardly, like someone who doesn't quite know what to say, but knows he needs to be there. John. Greg. The two remained silent for a few seconds. So Greg pulled up a chair and sat down. I know we don't talk much. In fact, I think the last time I really spoke to you was at Helen's funeral. John looked away. Greg continued, but when I saw you lying there in that barn, man, I can't explain it. It was like I had failed you all this time, like we all had failed. You didn't fail, Greg. I was the one who distanced myself. I know, but we let you drift away, and that's a mistake too. John said nothing. Greg took a deep breath. News of what happened spread quickly. And you know what happened? People started showing up, first at the grocery store, then at the gas station, then at the church. Everyone was asking how you were, what we could do, if someone was going to take care of the farm while you were here. John frowned. Taking care of the farm? Yes, because you have cattle, you have chickens, you have the barn that's been needing repairs for a long time, and we got organized. What do you mean, you got organized? Greg smiled for the first time. There's a community effort going on at your farm right now, John. About 10 or 12 neighbors. They're fixing the fence that fell down in the last storm, painting the barn, taking care of the animals. Mrs. Patterson made 3 trays of lasagna and left them in your refrigerator. Matt filled your diesel tank for free, and more people are arriving tomorrow. John felt a tightness in his throat. Why? Why are you doing this? Greg was quiet for a moment. Then he said, in a low voice, because Bella reminded us of something we had forgotten. What? That we are still a community, and that no one here should be going through anything alone. John turned his face to the side and quickly wiped his eyes, but he wasn't fast enough. Greg stood up and placed his hand on his shoulder. Relax, we'll take care of everything. And he left. But before John could process what he had just heard, Mrs. Patterson came in. Then Matt. Then a woman named Claire, whom he barely knew, but who said she had lost her husband too, and knew exactly what it was like to wake up every day in a place that hurt just to look at. One by one, they went in. One by one, they said the same thing. You are not alone. And when the last visitor left and John was finally alone in the room, he looked out the window and saw the orange sky of the late afternoon. And for the first time in 5 years, he didn't feel like disappearing. But there was one thing that nobody knew yet. And when John found out, he would understand that what Bella did wasn't just saving his life. It was to save the soul of an entire city. John was discharged on the 5th day. When Greg's pickup truck pulled up to the farm entrance, John stood there for a good 10 seconds, unable to get out of the car, because that wasn't his farm. Or rather, it was. But at the same time, it wasn't anymore. The fence that had been down for over a year, repaired. The barn, whose paint had been peeling since before Helen died, painted bright red. The gate that creaked every time it opened, lubricated and working perfectly. And in the front garden, where only weeds used to grow, there were now beds of newly planted flowers. Daisies, lavender, wild roses, Helen's favorite flowers. John got out of the truck slowly, as if he were entering a sacred place. Greg stopped beside him. Claire brought the seedlings. She said she remembered that Helen always liked flowers in the garden. John was unable to speak. They walked up to the balcony, and that's when John saw it. On the wooden post next to the door, someone had hung a small hand-painted sign with neat lettering. John and Bella's home, where love still lives. He stopped. He took a deep breath and felt his chest collapse. Who did this? It was everyone's idea, Greg said quietly. We wanted you to know that this is still your home and that you don't have to leave. John looked at the ground. His hands were trembling. I've already signed the papers, Greg. The farm has already been sold. Greg turned to him surprised. What? I was going to leave. At the end of the month, I can't stand being here alone anymore. Every corner of this house reminds me of her. I wake up and still expect to hear her voice in the kitchen. I close my eyes and still smell the coffee she made every day. I can't anymore, Greg. I just can't. His voice broke. Greg was silent for a moment. Then he said, And Bella? Were you going to take her to the city? John nodded, but without conviction. I was going to try. But I know she would suffer. She was born here. She needs space. She needs to run. And I was going to take that away from her. Greg crossed his arms. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe Bella did what she did precisely because she knew? John looked at him, confused. Did you know what? That you were giving up. The words fell like stones. Greg continued. Border collies are smart, John. Everyone knows that. They sense things. They know when something's wrong. And I bet Bella sensed you were saying goodbye. Not just to the farm, to everything. John swallowed hard. She wouldn't let me give up, Greg said, and now we're not going to either. It was at that moment that the front door opened, and Bella ran away. She jumped on John with such force that she almost knocked him over. She licked his face, whimpered that high-pitched cry that dogs make when they miss someone, and clung to him as if they had been apart for years, not days. John knelt down and hugged her tightly, and for the first time since Helen had died, he cried, really cried. Not that stifled crying he held back alone in his room, not that silent crying he disguised in the shower. He cried loudly. He cried hard. He cried like someone who was finally allowed to break down, and Bella stayed there, her snout pressed against his chest, as if she knew that was exactly what he needed. When he finally managed to calm down, Greg helped him to his feet. Come here. There's something you need to see. They entered the house, and on the kitchen counter, John saw a stack of handwritten notes. Dozens of them, each one signed by a different neighbor. If you need anything, just call. Claire. We're here. We've always been. The Patterson family. You are part of this land, John, and this land is part of you. Matt. Thank you for reminding us what really matters. Greg. John picked up a ticket, then another, and in each one, the same message, conveyed in different ways. You are not alone. Greg placed his hand on his shoulder. We spoke with the buyer. We explained the situation. He understood. He said he'll cancel the sale if you want to keep it. John looked at him, incredulous. Did you guys do this? Bella did it. We just followed her example. John looked out the kitchen window. He saw the fields. He saw the newly painted barn. He saw Bella running outside, free, happy, at home. And for the first time in 5 years, he saw more than just pain. He saw an opportunity. But what John didn't yet know, and what would change everything again, was that the community effort wasn't over. Because the following Saturday, something was going to happen on that farm that no one in that community would ever forget. On Saturday morning, John woke up to the sound of voices outside. He looked out the bedroom window and couldn't believe what he saw. There were people. Lots of people. It wasn't just the neighbors who had helped during the week. It was entire families. Children running across the lawn. Women bringing baskets of food. Men unloading tools from pickup trucks. He went downstairs, still in his pajamas, confused, and opened the front door. Greg was there, smiling. "Good morning, John. I hope you slept well, because today is going to be a long day." What's happening? "Community effort," Greg said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "We decided that since you're staying, we'll finish what we started." John looked around. There were at least 30 people there, maybe more. Mrs. Patterson came to him with a steaming cup of coffee. "Here, dear. You're going to need some energy." He picked up the cup, still trying to process it, but I didn't ask for that. Claire appeared beside him, holding a shovel. "We know, but Bella asked for it. And we learned to listen." John felt a lump in his throat. Throughout the day, he watched those people, most of whom he barely knew, working on his farm as if it were their own. They repaired the barn roof. They cleaned the field where the cattle grazed. They organized the workshop, which had been a mess for years. They planted more flowers around the house. And in the late afternoon, as the sun began to set, someone brought a guitar. Someone lit a bonfire in the middle of the field. And for the first time in a long time, that farm once again had the sounds of life. The children played with Bella, who ran from one side to the other as if she had finally found her purpose: to care, to protect, to unite. John was sitting on a log near the campfire, watching everything, when Greg sat down next to him. "You know what I realized?" Greg said, looking at the fire. "What?" "We were so busy surviving that we forgot to live, each of us locked up on our own property, taking care of our own things, pretending everything was fine. But nobody was fine, John. Nobody." John looked at him. Greg continued. "Claire lost her husband. Matt has been raising 2 children alone since his wife left. Mrs. Patterson buried her youngest son last year. And I almost lost the farm last year because of debts. But nobody talked about any of that. We just existed." He took a deep breath. "Until Bella showed us that we could still care, that we could still show up for each other, that we were still a community, even after everything." John felt his eyes burning. "I thought nobody cared." "And I thought the same thing," Greg said. "But the truth is, everyone was paying attention. We just forgot how to show it." At that moment, Matt stood up near the campfire and asked for attention. "Guys, I know we came here to help John, but I think everyone here knows we didn't do this just for him. We did it for ourselves too." The people around the campfire nodded. Matt continued, "Because the truth is, this community was dying. We had stopped seeing each other, helping each other, caring about each other. And it took a dog saving a man's life for us to remember who we are when we're together." He looked at John. "So, thank you, John, for letting us be a part of your life again. And thank you, Bella, for teaching us what really matters." Everyone applauded. And Bella, who was lying at John's feet, lifted her head and looked at him with those border collie eyes that seemed to see right into your soul. John bent down and stroked her head. "You knew, didn't you?" he whispered. "You knew I needed them. And that they needed me." Bella nuzzled her nose against his hand. And at that moment, John understood. Bella hadn't just saved his life that day in the barn. She had saved the soul of an entire city that had forgotten what it meant to belong anywhere. She had reminded everyone that love isn't just about being together on good days. It's about showing up on bad days. It's about holding someone's hand when they're too weak to hold it themselves. It's about transforming an empty farm into a home full of life again. John canceled the sale. And in the following months, that farm became a meeting point for the community. Every Saturday, people would show up. Sometimes to help with something. Sometimes just to have coffee and chat. Sometimes just to remember they weren't alone. And Bella? Bella became a local legend. The children at the school wrote essays about it. The town newspaper published the story. And every time someone new came to the region and asked about John McAllister's farm, the answer was always the same. That's the farm where a dog taught an entire town how to be a family again. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how far we stray. It doesn't matter how deep we fall. There's always someone willing to come and pick us up. Sometimes that someone has 4 paws, a giant heart, and a loyalty that words can't express. And sometimes, all we need is a reason to believe that we still belong somewhere. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, leave a like, comment below what memory this story evoked in you, and share this video with someone who needs to feel loved today. Because just as Bella didn't let John give up, we won't give up on you either. See you in the next story.